A host of immigrants flock in, 1 million a year. They come in teeming steerages from Italy, Russia, Central Europe, hoping for a better life and dreaming that America's streets are paved with gold. They will bring balance and some problems too. Often their problem will be just to earn a bare living wage.
Even today, most immigrants still migrate to America, and in 2016, the Pew Research Center stated that 43.7 million immigrants live in America. This equates to an astonishing 13.5% of the U.S. population. This is the highest amount of immigrants living in America since the year 1890. The United Nations even ranked the U.S. third out of the top 20 countries to take in refugees. The footage you have just seen is from Ellis Island. It's amazing that after all these years, people are still coming to America for the same reasons that they did back then. People enter this country seeking a better life, not only for themselves, but for their family. What you are seeing now is footage from the migrant caravan that came all the way from Honduras. These people have amazing dedication. They've walked thousands of miles just to get here so they can have a better life. It saddens me to see all this chaos and violence happening. The immigration system is broken and something needs to be done. As of right now, the two most popular solutions are building a wall or having open borders. Many people, especially President Trump, want to build a wall to stop illegal immigrants from coming into our country and stealing our jobs and stop them from committing crimes. The most interesting arguments that I found to build the wall comes from Chicago Tribune writer Robert J. Samuelson. He says that we should build the wall because President Trump promises that if the wall is built, the Dreamers or DACA recipients can stay in this country and they don't have to worry about being deported. To prove this, President Trump is caught saying,
"No, we're not looking at citizenship, we're not looking at amnesty, we're looking at allowing people to stay here. We're talking about taking care of people that were brought here, people that have done a good job and were not brought here of their own volition. But very importantly, what we want, we have to have a wall. If the wall is going to be obstructed, when we need the funds at a little bit later date, we'll be determining how much we need. Then we're not doing anything."
Will he live up to this promise? I don't know. Only time will tell. And yes, statistically, I know that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes. I am just arguing from President Trump's point of view and that of those who support the wall. I used to think that the idea of open borders was stupid until I read an article from Fortune magazine by a man named Rutger Birdman. He explains that if we have open borders, not just in America, but throughout the world, that could really help the impoverished people of the world. To quote him directly, he says, "If all the developed nations would let in just 3% more immigrants, the world's poor would have $305 billion more to spend," according to a 2007 study by the World Bank. Never would have guessed that it was possible. Ever since the election of Donald Trump, the topic of illegal immigration has been talked about more and more. This just divides the country. People on the right will say this about people on the left.
The unhinged left sinks even lower.
And people on the left will say this about people on the right.
I would never say that all Republicans are racist, but if you are a racist and you're looking for a political party, this is the obvious choice.
It's disgusting to see American politics and the media behave like children when there are much bigger issues to deal with. The reason that both the left and the right cannot agree on anything is because they both have their own definitions of what's right and what's wrong. This is known as natural law theory, where politicians bring their subjective beliefs and moral behavior into policymaking. Dr. Mohsen Al-Attar of the University of Warwick School of Law does a really good job at explaining natural law theory.
Now, natural law theorists determine the validity of a law by reference to a moral authority that exists beyond the law itself. The most important element for natural law theorists is that law is not regarded as separate from morality, but rather law is subordinate to that morality.
There's still one major flaw with this theory. Not everyone has the same morals, so no one is going to get along in the first place. Even if we have a Republican who says that we should build the wall because they want to keep the country safe. That is their own view, and we can't tell them what's right and what's wrong. The same could be said about the Democrats, who could say people who want to come to this country are just trying to make a better life for themselves and their family. This is, of course, their own view, and we can't do anything to change that. So if someone were to actually use natural law theory in a real-life setting, it would make sense to combine it with another moral theory like utilitarianism. YouTube channel Then and Now does a really good job at defining utilitarianism from Mill's perspective, and says,
Utilitarians maintain that you can judge whether an action is morally right or wrong by the amount of net pleasure or pain it produces. Mill says that all action is for the sake of some end, and rules of action, it seems natural to suppose, must take their whole character and colour from the end to which they are subservient. To understand what we should do morally, we should know how to judge our actions, and Mill says that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. By happiness is intended pleasure and the absence of pain, by unhappiness, pain and the privation of pleasure.
There are still problems with utilitarianism because it only takes 51% of the population to be happy for an action to be morally right. So even though 49% of the population is unhappy, it does not matter because more of the population is happy. I like the idea of securing borders because I think it helps keep America safe. Like I said earlier, I know that immigrants are statistically likely to commit less crimes, especially violent ones. I just hate the fact that we still occasionally get cases like Molly Tibbetts, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. The thing I just hate most is that these politicians, they just don't give a shit about her, it seems like. They're just disrespectful, and they just say things like this.
And within hours of the arrest, politicians began using Tibbetts' death as a rallying point for the right. Iowa's Republican senators released a joint statement blaming, quote, criminals who broke our immigration laws, adding, quote, we cannot allow these tragedies to continue.
It really pisses me off that when something like this happens, because immigration becomes the #1 topic in the news, and it's talked about for weeks. And it's not even talked about for the right reasons. Both the left and the right have to reign superior and emerge and victorious over the other like it's a fucking war, and I just hate it. I want these kinds of rare but heinous crimes to stop. I think the wall could help prevent these crimes. There's no way of knowing this, but I'm willing to bet that Molly would still be here today if this man who murdered her was not able to sneak into this country in the first place.